Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending our webinar on the Portugal Golden Visa 2026. We understand that there recently a change in the nationality law, so we will also cover that. So I am the founder and CEO of the Golden Portugal, and we have our legal consultant with us in this webinar. So as today's agenda, we will talk about what has not changed. So that's the Golden Visa program. We will compare it with some of the other popular programs in the world. And then we will go into details of the nationality law changes, your options at year 5, and then the fast track program. Also, at the end, we will cover a little bit of the reason why you might want to start your plan B, and then Q&A. Okay, so what has not changed is the Golden Visa program itself. So the investment options remains at for fund investment, it's 500K. For donation route, it's 200 or 250. There's also other like create jobs or invest in a company. And for the investment, for example, fund, you can split across 2 to 3 funds, and we can apply for you remotely until the biometrics. And the residency citizenship, the 14 days every 2 years remains. Permanent residence available after 5 years also remains. I think the main changes that the president signed, it's the citizenship pathway. It was at year 5, now it's changed to year 10. We will talk in details about that later on. And then it's after you have the passport, is the visa-free travel. The family and exit still remains the same. So there's no age limit for kids, but the dependent has to be, for children, has to be single, studying, and financially dependent. And parents from both sides can be included. The investment exit can be after 5 years, and it will not affect your residency or your path to citizenship later on. So the language test for PR and citizenship is also remains, but additionally, there will be a cultural test for nationality. So just a very brief overview of the Portugal Golden Visa compared with other popular programs in the world. So we still think it is one of the most advantage because first, here you can see the exit. You can exit after 5 years, where all the other ones, the EU, you have to hold always. The processing time, it's decreasing a lot from maybe people were saying they have to wait 2 to 3 years before, but now within 1 year, you might get your first card. Citizenship is 10 years, but you don't need to live in Portugal, whereas all the other comparable programs, you need to live there like long term. And the kids, there's no age limit, unlike a lot of the programs. It has to be under 18 or has to be under 25. Again, we want to reinforce why Portugal remains to be our #1 recommendations. We also have a more detailed comparison of the programs we've just shown you. And to be honest, we think the whole team think Portugal, it's the top program because you get the EU citizenship without relocation. You get to exit your investment after 5 years. There's no age for your kids. And after getting the PR, dependents will become independent in the process. So they no longer need to be single, studying, and financially dependent on you. And we also hear some noises or questions from our clients say, so now it's 5 to 10. Will the government increase again from 10 to, I don't know, 15? But actually the EU law, it says that 10 years the maximum ceiling for EU for neutralization. So the government might decrease, but it's not possible for it to increase. The government in the 2015-16 did decrease from 6 years to 5 years for citizenship. So we don't know. We cannot say it will or will not, but 10 years is the maximum. And I will now pass to Otavio, a legal consultant for the nationality law change.
Perfect. Thank you, Susana. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure discussing this with you right now. We did have those big news regarding the nationality law change this week. It was finally published, and that's what we are going to try to understand right now. In the end, we'll be able to clarify all of your questions as well. But first, I think it's very important for us to understand and separate what is the nationality law and the immigration law. We have two separate laws that will regulate the immigration path for those who are willing to get the citizenship in the end. We have the nationality law that will be based on the citizenship rights, and the immigration law will regulate all visa types and residence permits as well. So what was really changed this week and those debates over the past months, it was all about the nationality law, changing general rules, and more specifically here to what concerns us the most, it's about the citizenship by residence. So we had those big change, this increased period. This is what was changed right now. On the other hand, the immigration law, the general immigration law remains the same, meaning that the Golden Visa program is untouched. We still are able to apply for that under one of the options that Susana mentioned before. Mainly what we have, it's the fund, investment in funds here, that it's the most common path. And it's all the same. So you can apply for that. You can get the residence permit without needing to relocate to Portugal, just needing to be here 14 days every period of 2 years. So the Golden Visa is untouched. And what will change now, it's the process for acquiring the citizenship later, after you complete the necessary period for that. And it's also good and important to understand that the law was published this week. The parliament approved the final text, and it was signed by the president. But still, they have 90 days, the government has 90 days, 3 months, to publish a regulatory decree that will clarify some vague information that we have in the nationality law. So after this law change, they will also update the regulatory decree for the nationality rights. And then we'll have more clarity and understand exactly how these new requirements will actually be in practice. We can pass to the next slide, please. So about who is affected. If we just take a conservative approach and considering that this law change has no transition period, meaning that after its publication, the next business days, it becomes effective. It will be effective after the 18th of May. So since the 19th of May, this is already valid. And we understand by having this conservative approach that all residence permit applicants and holders who haven't completed the 5-year period and haven't submitted their citizenship by the 18th of May, they will be affected, because it means that by this date, they didn't complete the necessary requirements to have the right for applying for citizenship, meaning that before they were not entitled to apply to citizenship yet, so they will be affected. Those who already applied before this date, pending citizenship applications, will not be affected. The law cannot retroact to harm the rights of these applicants. And we might try to discuss and understand what about legitimate legal expectations, because we understand, of course, and everyone who planned their relocation to Portugal and knowing that after 5 years they could apply for citizenship, it's kind of a frustration right now. So there are some grounds for discussion about legitimate legal expectations. And this was also highlighted one part of this discussion when we say about specifically government delays, because we know that for every residence permit application, the government has up to 90 business days, 3 months more or less, to issue and provide a decision. And we know that in practice, it's not always like that, especially for golden visas, because of the backlog. There were people waiting for more than a year. So about these delays, we should understand that it could not harm the legitimate expectations, because we should have the decision within 90 days. So about that, the president, after signing the law change, highlighted that it's something that cannot, the government delays cannot harm these people, these expectations. So we are waiting to see about the decree, the regulatory decree, if we'll have more clarity on that. But as of now, what we have is the final text of the law that was changed, and there is no transition period. And what can be discussed, we will see it later, is about how to calculate the period of validity of the residence in Portugal. So about the key updates to the nationality law that most concerns us now. First of all, it's about the increased period of residence to apply for that. It was 5, and now it is 7 for Europeans and citizens from the Portuguese-speaking community, countries of the Portuguese-speaking community, and 10 years for nationals of third countries. So those are the new requirements. They increased to 7 and 10 years based on the origin of the applicant. We also have this new requirement, which is about submitting not only a certificate proving proficiency in Portuguese language, but also about the country's culture. You need to prove knowledge about the country's culture, history, and national symbols. This is one of the vague information that we have in the law change. We don't know exactly how it will be in practice, how they are going to assess that. This will come within 90 days with the regulatory decree. We also have an extra requirement. It's also stated that the applicants must prove knowledge on the fundamental rights and duties of the Portuguese Republic and its political organization. Here, they are not talking about a certificate. We don't know yet if it will be like an interview or something else. So we also need to wait to understand how this is going to be in practice. There's also a new requirement. Some other countries of the EU, I know that other countries as well, like the UK, for you to become a resident by naturalization, by time of residence, you need to take an oath to the fundamental principles of the country. In this case here, they state that it should be, you need to take an oath to the fundamental principles of the democratic rule of law. This is something that might be at the moment you apply for citizenship. We don't know yet if it can be just a simple declaration or if it is under an interview that they're going to implement. There's also an extra requirement about proof of means of subsistence. This just for this path, citizenship by residence. We also need to wait for the clarification on this requirement. If it will be the same as we have for visa applications, people will need to prove that they earn at least the Portuguese minimum wage or that they have savings enough to maintain themselves based on the Portuguese minimum wage. But we are going to wait to see exactly how this will be. Here, maybe one of the most sensitive parts of the law change is about how to calculate the period of residence in Portugal in order to be able to apply for that, to be entitled for the Portuguese citizenship by residence. So when does the clock start for that? It was before like a gray zone. We had some people who would apply for a certificate issued by AIMA, the immigration agency that will clearly state what's the length of residence of the applicant. But recently, about 2 years ago, there was a specific rule in the law that they introduced expressly saying that it would start from the application date, given that it was approved later. So once you complete, in this case, in the past, it was 5 years, they will calculate from the application date of your residence permit. And due to those delays that I was mentioning before, that the president highlighted that it cannot harm the applicant's rights, we would benefits of 1 year of waiting period would be calculated for that. However, now, during this law change in the process, they canceled it. There was the revocation of this express provision that was introduced around 2 years ago. And now we don't have that. And if you read the law, like the text, the official text, it won't say exactly when it starts, but it will say that the period is calculated for all the legal residence that the applicant had in Portugal. We know that here we have some limbos, some people who are waiting to get a decision, and then the government provides, for example, a decree law that will entitle this person to stay in the country even without a permit because of their delays. We don't know yet if that could be considered a legal residence. If you are taking a conservative approach, we just need to understand that, okay, so from now on, it will count from the start date of the first residence permit card. But since the president highlighted this concern, and we will still have the regulatory decree, there are some grounds to get this clarified by the decree, and we are going to see in practice how it's going to be. As of now, it's still a gray zone, and we need to wait a little more to take action to understand if that will harm your rights or not. The next one, well, for CPLP citizens, those from countries, Portuguese-speaking countries, it's presumed to be proficient in Portuguese, the applicant, because they come from a Portuguese-speaking country, but they introduced a different text saying that if there is a lack of such proficiency, if it is evident upon the review of the application, they might ask the applicant to prove that. So under a certificate, as they do for third countries' nationals. And in this case, we understand that this is like a window that they can use if they notice that such a person, for example, was not born in this Portuguese-speaking country, or if this person recently acquired the citizenship for another Portuguese-speaking country. So there is a possibility they will ask either by an interview or a certificate to see and assess if that applicant is proficient in Portuguese. We also have some other main changes related, for example, for children who was born in Portugal. Now, children that, if their parents are not Portuguese or not from the European Union, so now they are only considered native Portuguese people if one of their parents is has been a legal resident for at least 5 years. They can also be naturalized Portuguese after one of their parents complete 5 years of legal residence here, and if over 16, still need to provide criminal record certificate and adhere to democratic principles. Finally, there was also a change related citizenship by ascendancy, like for parents of Portuguese people, that was ended, but they introduced the possibility for great-grandchildren to acquire Portuguese citizenship if they are holding a residence permit in Portugal for at least 5 years. So it's a reduced period for great-grandchildren. For grandchildren and children, it remains basically the same, with some changes for grandchildren just related to the proof of knowledge on the culture of Portugal. So it's also important to discuss about the EU standards. Susana already talked about some of this information because many countries in the EU require 10 years of residence, like Spain and Italy, or they also require a strong proof of ties to their culture. Like in Germany, France, Netherlands, you need to take a test to show that you have enough knowledge on their culture, and also you need to study the language. So this movement right now, it's more to align the politics in Portugal to the current EU standards for citizenship by residence. We also understand it's also important to highlight that investment cannot directly lead to citizenship. We had the Malta case. They were by the Supreme Court of the European Union. They suffered like some sanctions because they were offering that. It's not a direct path. And that's why we have in Portugal two separate laws. We have the immigration law and the nationality law. The nationality law entitles everyone who has a residence permit for at least now 7 or 10 years to apply for citizenship. So regardless if it is through investment or not, it's a general rule that also for golden visa applicants, it works. So we cannot have a direct line in order to justify the legit expectations, but it's all of that is can be under discussion, and we can help to clarify the scenarios as well, depending on each case. And also there is a general tendency towards tighter border controls. That's general in the EU. Portugal is just aligning a bit for that. But we know that in the past, Portugal received a lot of immigrants who were already applying for citizenship, and they were not prepared for this huge number of applications. So they were on high demand. They are still on high demand. But we noticed that recently they implemented some task forces, and they are indeed improving their services and clearing the backlog. Right, so about the regulatory decree, as I mentioned, they have up to 90 days to publish that, and then we'll have a clear picture about the law change. As I mentioned before, it's about how to prove knowledge on the culture and how it will be to assess when you take an oath about the principles of the country. So everything will be clarified by this regulatory decree. Also about the means of subsistence, they might clarify about that if it will be indeed related to the minimum wage of Portugal as we have for visas, and mainly about when the clock starts to calculate the residence period. Here is very important also to understand, because most people won't really know which are the paths that are available for you after you complete 5 years of legal residence in Portugal. We always talked about how important it was to get the passport and become an EU citizen or a Portuguese citizen, but you also have some other important options that will lead you to a very strong status in the European Union. So since the Golden Visa program remains untouched, you can still benefit of the short stay requirement, so 14 days every 2 years period, and it's possible yet to withdraw the investment after 5 years. So once you complete 5 years of legal residence, meaning here that it's from the first card issuance date, after you complete 5 years, you are entitled to apply for the Golden Visa Permanent Residence Permit, which will have directly a validity of 5 years, but it will require the Portuguese proficiency, the certificate for that, level A2, which is a basic level. In 5 years, I'm sure it's not that hard to learn the language and get the certificate. And there are plenty of language courses, remote language courses that we could also refer you to. But the thing is that to keep the benefit as being a GV permit holder, they charge the applicants a higher fee, significantly higher. It will be around 8,000 euros to get this 5 years validity for the residence permit. There's also a possibility, let's say that the applicant won't have the Portuguese certificate, the proficiency certificate. It's possible just to renew the temporary permit for another period of 2 years. For that, it's a reduced fee of around 3,000 euros, but it means that the applicant will need to keep renewing it. And if the goal is to apply for citizenship after 10, well, they will need to renew it at least 2 times. And there is also the EU long-term residence permit, which is also available for golden visa holders. And it also has a 5 years validity. It also requires the Portuguese proficiency. But here we are talking now about permits that are not under the golden visa program. So after 5 years, if the applicant wants to withdraw the investment but keep not the golden visa status, but the resident status, it's possible to switch and get this EU long-term residence permit, or even the standard permanent residence permit. But those require the applicant to actually live in the country, and they would lose the benefit of the short stay requirement. There is only a requirement that during these 5 years, the applicant, the holder, the permanent permit holder, cannot be out of the country for more than 24 consecutive months every period of 3 years, or 30 interpolated months.
Okay,
For
can you
those,
talk a little bit about the EU long-term residence permit? So I understand that holding this permit, the holder can actually move to another EU country without.
yeah, that's the difference. Good to highlight that. Thank you, Susana. The thing here is that the EU long-term residence permit and the standard one, if you see, they are basically the same, but actually the EU long-term residence permit has more benefits if the intention of such an applicant would be to relocate to another EU country. I mean, let's say a foreigner from the US, for example, if they would like to apply for a permit in another EU country, they can do it directly without needing to apply for a residence visa. So if they have ways to justify why they are moving to this other EU country, well, they have the right to move and apply for a card directly without needing to go to the consulate and applying for a visa before. So this is good because it's almost like you have the rights of an EU passport holder. But in this case, it means that if the intention is to move to a different country, you will just need to switch the permit again to the EU long-term residence permit issued by this other EU member state. And you will lose the time that you had in Portugal. So if your intention is to keep 10 years of legal residence in Portugal, you cannot move to another one and switch the card. So it's good based on specific situations. So it already grants you those rights if the intention from the beginning was to move to another country. By having this EU long-term permit, you can already do that before you have a passport.
Okay, so thank you, Otavio, for such a
problem.
detailed explanations. You will remain here, and then I will finish the other half, and then we will go to the Q&A. So actually, we want to give a little bit of an insight to audience about the impact of the 5 years to 10 years. When we talk about the changes, there's a lot of noises in the media and so on about the changes. But when you look into it in details, actually the biggest impact are the D visas and other residence visa, because before they could have just stay here, live here for 5 years and get the citizenship, and then they could actually move to another EU country or back to their own country or whatever. So with the 10 years, they have to stay here longer. And that means since they're physically living in Portugal, they need to be the tax resident, so they need to pay tax for longer. And this is a big change, a significant impact for them. But for Golden Visa, when you think about it, you actually are just, first of all, you don't need to be a tax resident here. So either 5 years, 10 years, you will not be paying taxes. And then for the global income in Portugal, and then also you're not restricted in where you live. So you can still live anywhere you want and just come here every 2 years for 14 days. So we can see it as a passive immigration and passive investment, because if you're investing in a fund, the fund manager will be taking care of your investment for you. And the 10 years and 5 years for a lot of our clients or investors, it doesn't, especially if you're from a country with a strong passport, it doesn't really have that much of an impact. We also want to introduce here the fast track program options, because in the latest law that has passed, if you are a citizen from a CPLP country, which is a Portuguese-speaking country, you will decrease. You only need 7 years instead of 10 years to be eligible for applying citizenship. So that decreases 3 years for the time, and the Portuguese language might be waived. So as Otavio was saying, we don't know. We need to really look at the decree first, because there might be reasons that they say, since this is a newly acquired passport, you might still need to take the test. So this is to be confirmed. And actually, getting the São Tomé passport, you can do it before you apply for the GV or after you apply for the GV, because Portugal allows dual citizenship. In the time of you applying for the citizenship, you can show that you also have the São Tomé citizenship, which allows you to benefit from the fast track and maybe the language test as well. And before we go into the Q&A, we want to share with our audience why Portugal is still one of the best reason here, because me, Otavio, and the whole team, we're in Portugal. We vow for Portugal a lot. We love the place, and we want to share what we think it's very important for investor to think about before they choose their plan B. So the first is Portugal's economy is actually in an uptrending trend momentum, and it's been named the strongest growth in the EU countries last year. So, and we can see that a lot of the big corporation in the world, it's already coming in, like Google, Microsoft, Amazon has all chosen Portugal for their European hub. And because of the AI, a lot of data center will be set up in Portugal because of the green energy advantage. We have a lot of sun here. It's really sunny right now. And it means that the electricity or electrical prices will be more stable than other countries who relies on other source of power, such as like oil or gas. And also from historically, Lisbon is one of the last open gateway to a free world in World War II. A lot of the royalties, and they came to Portugal because Portugal was in neutral in the World War II, and it wasn't really touched even in the World War II census. Also because Portugal is a very relatively smaller country, not in the forefront of a lot of the controversy or arguments. So we have the protection of the EU, but none of the frontline exposure. Another one to mention, which is quite rare in the Western country right now, is Portugal still has a zero inheritance tax for direct descendants. And also why Portugal, it's of course the access to the EU education and work opportunities in the EU, because a lot of the work opportunities require legal residency in EU to be even considered. So why now? Very strong reason is, first of all, Plan B has to be planned before the crisis. So, and we know that a lot of the crisis, we don't know, we don't have to foresee when it's going to happen. So this is a good time to always, the sooner the better. The best time is if you have applied this 5 years ago, and the second best time is now. And the second reason is Euro, it's gaining strength, especially against US dollar, and this trend might continue. And then the clock starts whenever you apply. So if you apply today, the clock starts, counts from today to when you get your first card. When you do it 2 years later, it will start at 2 years later. And the fourth one is actually a lot of the clients, they only look at the cost of the Golden Visa, but they haven't looked at the returns. Since the Golden Visa is an investment, not a donations, you could, depending on the funds that you choose, you could get returns on your investment, some of them even up to 6% or single digit, double digit, depending on the fund's performance. And actually, it could cover all your cost as well. And lastly, we just want to take a look at what you do today versus in 1 year's time, you will get your residence card. And then in 5 years' time, you would get your options into where, if you want to do the PR options or the EU long-term resident card, to move to another EU country. And then at that time as well, you can exit your investment, and your children will have the independent status if they get the PR. And then at that time, after the 5 years, is the 10-year time where you get the citizenship, where you get the full passport. And the biggest difference is you get a passport with visa-free for 186 countries, and EU rights equal to the local and voting rights. So actually, the majority of your rights actually starts from year 1 and year 5. The last part, the passport, it's like you get the visa-free travel, which for someone with a strong passport, it's really, they already have that with the original passport. So I think we can start to see if we have any questions. This is the QR code for a consultation. If you have any specific scenarios, we welcome you to book a free consultation. And the other QR code is our YouTube channels, where we will upload a lot of information up there as well. Okay, let me see. Do we have questions?
Yeah, we have some. I don't know if you'd like to bring or...
Yeah, let me just take a look. Yeah, we have a lot of questions. When does the 5-year, 10-year clock start? Application, biometric, and first permit issues.
Yeah, that's one of the main questions we have right now. So as I presented before, we would have this conservative approach by the final text of the law that was approved. You should then consider that it would start from the first card issuance date. However, considering that the government is delaying a lot some of the applications, the fact that before they were accepting the waiting period, they canceled this rule, but the president highlighted that it could not be like that. We had in the past as well, recently, the Constitutional Court here in Portugal condemning this type of action, like that the government could not harm the rights of the foreigners in Portugal. We may still have some good expectations regarding the publication of the regulatory decree that will happen in up to 90 days. So we'll have more clarity on that after the decree is published. As of now, it remains a little like a gray zone, and we'll clarify properly at a later time. Yeah.
Okay, and another question is, GVPR permit still allows you to remove the investment and only have to stay 14 days every 2 years?
Yeah. In this case, considering that the program, the Golden Visa program, remains the same, the law expressly states that the Golden Visa holder needs to keep the investment in Portugal for at least 5 years. It doesn't require the Golden Visa holder to keep the investment for continuing having the same permit. Like if you renew the temporary permit after 5 years, or if you apply for the permanent residence permit, you can already withdraw the investment after 5 years.
Okay. Another question is for D7 holder. So after 5 years of residence, they could apply for the standard PR, then leave Portugal for years 6 to 10, then apply for citizenship in Portugal after year 10. Is that correct?
Not really.
I don't think
Actually,
so.
the law
No.
entitles the residence permit holders to be out of the country for a certain period without justification. For D7, there is a limit for that. If I'm not mistaken, it's also about 24 consecutive months. But then, in this case, if you need to be out of the country for more than the allowed period by law, it's still possible to provide justification if you have like work-related matters, health issues, and you need to stay longer. You can inform the immigration agency in order to keep your permit. But by procedure, if you leave for more than this allowed period, you will lose the permit. It's not something that is automatically canceled. They will need to notify you to present a justification. It will be an administrative process where you could challenge and dispute the decision as well. It's always possible to discuss, but no, it's not possible just to get the permanent permit and then be out and come back at the 10th year.
Okay. If you choose not to apply for permanent residency after 5 years, how many times can you renew the temporary residence permit?
You are always entitled to keep renewing it,
Yeah.
as long as you prove that you were able to comply with the rules of maintaining the investment for 5 years. You are entitled to keep the status, so you can keep renewing the 2 years period permit.
Okay, so I think another 2 other related questions, like what is the living requirement? I think he means the stay requirement for GV application from year 6, which is 14 days every 2 years, right?
Yeah, that's why we have the fees that are higher for the applicants to keep the Golden Visa status. They will need to pay for that higher fees. And we were talking about around 8,000 euros to get the permanent one. It's valid for 5 years, the card, meaning that after 5 years, they will need to apply again to get a new card, or they can just decide to apply for the citizenship after the year 10. So to keep the benefit of just staying in the country for 14 days every 2 years, you will need to pay more. If you get the standard permit or the EU long-term residence permit, you will need actually to prove that you are living here. You are entitled to leave the country for a certain period, but it's supposed for you to be present in Portugal to keep that.
Yeah, I think another question is if they apply just for the standard, the normal, what is the annual physical stay requirement? I think you already have that, but to clarify.
Yeah, it is 24 consecutive months that you are allowed to be out of the country. You cannot be out of the country for more than 24 consecutive months every period of 3 years or 30 interpolated months. You cannot do that. So within the period of validity of the card, meaning 5 years, that's the rule that you will need to comply with.
Right. And do I have to be able to pass the A2 Portuguese exam to be able to exit my investment after 5 years?
No, not really. That's only a requirement for PR. So for the EU long-term residents or the standard PR or even the GVPR, you will need to prove that. If you keep renewing the standard temporary permit, you can withdraw the investment after 5 years, and you don't even need to get the certificate of proficiency in Portuguese.
Okay. And a very similar questions, if we withdraw the investment after 5 years, are we giving up the GV as well, or they are able to keep it?
No, it's possible to keep it, yeah.
Okay. Okay, there's some tax issue about no inheritance tax in Portugal, but what about estate tax? That is, if we die as a Portugal resident, are there taxes taken before our non-resident children inherit?
In this case, we'll need to analyze further this
Yeah.
information. It's always very important to have a consultation with a tax specialist. We can always refer our clients to a tax specialist, but there's a possibility of after becoming a Portuguese citizen needing to pay for some specific taxes. Yeah.
Yeah. But inheritance tax means like if you pass away and your direct kids, they don't need to pay inheritance tax, but not so sure about the non-residents and residents, but I don't think it makes a difference. But anyways, this is to be discussed case by case with a tax specialist.
I saw that someone was also asking about the possibility of, for those who applied before, not being affected by the new nationality law. And here's what we still need exactly. Well, first of all, I can tell that it would affect, by the text that we have right now, it affects everyone who have not completed before the 5-year period and hadn't applied for the citizenship, but pending applications for citizenship will not be affected. On the other hand, visa applications, residence permit applications, and also their holders, visa holders, permit holders, if they hadn't completed 5 years and hadn't submitted the application, yes, they would be affected.
Okay. And one of the questions is about how can we use the 401k funds for the GV? We could guide you through this process. We already have many clients who go through this. The simple short answer is you have to roll over to IRA, SDIRA. But we do have providers that can help you with that, and we can guide you through it because we have a lot of clients already went through the similar process. And then so with the 5 years GVPR, you still need to visit 14 days every 2 years.
Yeah. Which is not that bad, right? Portugal, you can always benefit here, especially in the summer. It's very pleasant.
So what would that possible to change back to prior decree, or the trend is getting more tighter in the near future? We don't really know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. They are adjusting a lot of rules related to immigration and nationality. We noticed that over the past years, but they already changed a lot in order to restrict the possibilities. We don't really believe that they are going to strict it even more. It's not likely, also because 10 years is the most they can go for the citizenship application. Maybe in the near future, actually, we will have more benefits. They can change it again to create more benefits because they might feel that they will need to attract more investors and more people coming to Portugal. So it's possible that in the near future, I'm optimistic. I believe that they could even decrease the period again.
So, are there any special provision available to get the residence permit much earlier than 1 year? They can sue, right?
Well, yeah, there's always a possibility of filing a lawsuit against the government in order to ask for an appointment. But this should be based on an urgent matter, actually. So it usually works for those who are living in Portugal or who decided to come and live for a while. Like if they can prove that they have a proof of address in Portugal, they can file the lawsuit and ask for an appointment due to the government's delay. Because by law, they have up to 90 business days to provide a decision. If they pass this deadline, they are under a delay that could not be justified. So some people are filing lawsuits to get that, but it's hard as well to predict if that will be effective because we know that the judiciary here, the courts are packed with those cases, and sometimes it even takes longer to get an appointment than if you would go through the normal path, considering that they have their task forces right now in the immigration agency and they can provide an appointment sooner than expected. I can tell that we had in the past people waiting for 2 to 3 years to get an appointment because of the pandemic. But recently, we already had clients who applied in late 2025 and they already got their appointments. So the tendency is to have a reduced waiting period until they finally respect the 90 days deadline.
We forecast or maybe in next year it will go back to normal because they're clearing up all the backlogs this year already. And there's another question. If you're on D7 or D8, can you switch to GV later to bypass the residency requirement? Definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's more common than it seems because we have, for example, people who relocated to Portugal under a D7 visa or a different residence visa type, but they no longer can comply with the stay requirement. So even us here with the Golden Portugal, we had cases like that, that they had to switch to the GV so they could go back to their countries and keep the resident status. So in the end, they can still apply for the citizenship. So yeah, it's possible to switch. You won't keep two cards. They will switch the D7 one to the Golden Visa one.
Okay. If not able to apply for citizenship after 5 years of GV PR, will the renewal required investment be kept and the children need to maintain dependent state? No.
Yeah, so the investment, as we mentioned, it's
No.
possible to withdraw after 5 years and still keep the Golden Visa status if the applicant decides to keep paying for that, and well, higher fees will be involved. As for the children, once you apply for the permanent permit, they will hold independent residence permits. So we usually recommend families to still have some sort of proof of dependency, at least for the moment when they apply for the permanent permit. But after that, during the 5 years period, you no longer need to prove that. And we understand that you don't even need to prove that for the permanent permit application. But it's always risky to get someone who doesn't really understand about the process and may ask for this extra document. So that's why it's also very important to have a lawyer accompanying you during the whole process.
Right. And what is the requirement for getting the EU long-term resident card?
It's very simple, actually. It's basically the same as the standard PR. So You just decide whether you want to apply for one or another, but the requirements are the same. You need to prove that you were holding a residence permit in Portugal for at least 5 years, and you need to prove proficiency in Portuguese language level A2. Also, some standard requirements like updated criminal records or like passport, those simple that we have for every application, but it's the same process. You just decide if you will go to the standard one and the EU long-term one.
Okay, I think this question is the same that say who switch from D visa to GV. They're saying, does it reset the clock? No, you can continue.
No, it doesn't. You can always you can combine. If you are holding a permit in Portugal, it doesn't matter under which circumstances it is, which status you have. It matters if you are a legal resident. So if you switch to GV, you can combine. However, it's also important to highlight that there is a maximum period to combine. They also had some updates regarding that. If I'm not mistaken, it will be for the past 9 years or 12 at most. Like if someone lived here, let's say in early 2000s, and now comes back, you could not benefit from that old period. But for the past 12 years, you can combine even if you left and came back. So yeah.
Right. And can you comment on using SDIRA to fund GV requirements? Yes, we have done that. Yeah, so it's quite easy. You just have to find the SDIRA provider in the US, and then you have to roll over your IRA or 401k there and invest into an eligible funds. And not all funds could take investment in SDIRA. But if you want more details informations, we even have on our YouTube, we have actually 2 interviews with our clients that have used the SDIRA approach. You could scan our QR codes, and there are some, and we have articles in our website as well. Or you could also book a free consultation. And then, can you apply for EU PR permit, then still stay in Portugal for 14 days every 2 years, and also live in another country in the EU until year 10 and get citizenship in Portugal after 10 years?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, that wouldn't work. The EU long-term residence permit would be a good option for those who are willing already to relocate to another EU country, but then you would give up of the period you had in Portugal, and it won't count for the 10 years in order to apply for citizenship here. The citizenship here by residents will always require proof of a Portuguese residence permit for that period.
Mm-hmm. And then there is a scenario of, let's say they hold the permit for 1 + 2 + 2. Actually, the first card should be 2 years already, 2 + 2 + 2 + 5. And they apply for citizenship. Do they need to renew their PR?
Yeah.
Waiting
for the citizenship.
Yeah.
Yeah, the citizenship application also has like a waiting period. Currently, it's taking, I would say, quite a long time, like up to 2 years, more or less, around 2 years. They are also trying to clear the backlog for that. But let's say you still have the intention of like coming to Europe or staying in Portugal. So you will need to renew the permit after the 10th year. But if you just need the passport later, if you don't need to use the benefits of a resident in Portugal or the European Union, then you can just wait and then get the passport. But then you would lose these rights. It really depends on each situation.
Okay. Is there any possibility that this revocation could be applied to those who submitting their application before this law was passed? Meaning those applicants were grandfathered into a 5-year period. Yeah, if you submit it before.
The citizenship application, yeah, but we understand that a lot of people are concerned as like a residence permit holder. They have the legitimate expectations of having the passport after 5 years. It is indeed legit to think like that. We still need to understand exactly how the decree will be, but the decree won't reduce the minimum period of 10 years. They will just clarify when the clock starts. So some firms, some colleagues of mine are advising also to prepare legal action to claim that. We still need to wait a little more to understand if that's going to be a good path. But some firms are also starting to prepare like class actions against the government. So we still have some time to see the developments of those discussions, and we are understanding right now how the new scenario will be. So we are always on top of the changes, and we'll have a clear picture of that in the next few days and months.
Okay, so if the goal is only for EU access and not concerned about the citizenship, which country's golden visa is the best? If the goal is not citizenship, there are other options available depending your own situation. If you want to invest in real estate, it could be Greece because it's one of the few EU country that do like real estate investment. But it really depends on your own situations. We do have another webinar on our YouTube that we discuss compare with a few different GV program, but you can always book a free consultation with us. Let's see, we are getting a lot of questions. Actually, there's real estate is no longer eligible for GV. So if you have, we would just, yeah, we will not answer like questions about getting real estate for GV. Yeah, also some questions also saying if there's going to be a joint lawsuit about a grandfathering protections. I think that was already discussed, right? Yeah.
Yeah. We are still waiting to see those developments. There is a possibility of claiming that through a lawsuit, but we are being like, we need to prepare to take the best approach. Yeah.
Right. If one buys a house in Portugal with the goal of simply living there part-time, 3 to 5 months, without much concern for the EU passport right now. Oh, so that's not specifically in Portugal? What is the best approach method for temporary residency? I think it's the GV because all the other residency, you need to live here more than 5 months. You need to here on average like 8 to 9 months a year. And if you want to live in Portugal, yeah.
For other permits, the general rule will be that you cannot be out of the country for more than 6 consecutive months or 8 interpolated months within the period of validity of the card. Usually it's 2 plus 3 years. So that's what you need to observe. If you need to be out of the country for more than this period, the GV is always the best option because you only need to be here for 14 days every 2 years.
Yeah. And one question is they want to know for the minimum residency, like the 14 days every 2 years, how do the government verify this? Is it based on the entry and exit records, hotel accommodation proof, or other documentation?
Yeah, it's always important to keep records of the itinerary, like when you travel to Portugal to prove that you indeed entered here. Because sometimes if you enter the Schengen area through a different country, you may receive a stamp from this other country, then you travel to Portugal and have no stamps. So to prove that, you need to have like the itinerary, the flight tickets, also hotel accommodation is good. And now we have the new EES system for border control in Europe. So this will replace the entry stamps. So you might not anymore have entry stamps in your passport. There will be a system where all countries will be able to check if you entered here or not. So we understand that in the future, they will be more developed on this part in order to access the EES system. But as a matter of precaution, we always recommend our clients to keep the proof of itinerary and hotel accommodations.
Yeah, they also ask, can they go to other European country during this time? But by law, you need to stay 14 days, but yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Also questions about the São Tomé, the cost for the application for the São Tomé citizenship takes about 2 to 3 months to get, and it's directly from application to citizenship. And it's a donation method. So right now it's from 90K for single applicant and 95K for family of 4. That's the donation amount to the government. So if you want more information, we could schedule a call on the application process and so on. It's quite straightforward. Yeah. And there's no requirement for language. Okay, the lawsuit. I think we have answer most of the questions. When IMS processing the citizenship and the PR expire before the citizenship is granted, will there be any issue? You need to have
No, for the application, you do need to have a valid residence permit. But if it expires in the meantime, it doesn't really matter, because what matters is the moment when you applied.
Yeah. Okay, I think.
Just one more. Sorry, I saw here about family members' appointments. We are finally receiving family members' appointments are being scheduled for early 27. So for those who already came, like the investor, the main applicant that already came for the biometrics appointment in Portugal, they are starting to book for family members. Yeah. But then only for, if I'm not mistaken, from January onwards.
Yeah, because from the second half of the year, we still have a lot of applicants from main applicants from last year that are getting the biometric appointments right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's mostly the questions, because we do have some repeated, and there's someone who wants to compare Malta and Latvia. We can do that next time. We didn't include it here because Latvia, it's very similar to Greece. You also need to live there, and to get the PR and so on. And Malta, it's very inconsistent. They do have a track record of canceling their program abruptly, like suddenly, without notice. In the next day, they announce, and the next day the program is gone. Okay, I think a lot of them are repeated questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, and we are available if anyone needs help. Can always book a call with us.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey.